7 games in the Premier League. I'm going to take a look at every single one of them right now in detail. Let's go. Never bet on the early is something they say, at least in Blackpool. It is Brentford hosting Spurs 11th against 4th. Just about 4th. It's actually Brentford that comes into this game in better form before the winter break. Beat Man City in that final game. 2 goals from Ivan Toney, who didn't go to the World Cup and is now not available for Brentford for probably a while. He's been betting on football, over 300 I think it is. So they're not going to be the same team without him, without that focal point. He does so much for the team. He's such a good player. Every game this season has seen at least 1 goal for Spurs, whether they've won, lost or drawn. There's not been a 0-0. Away from home, they've only won 3 out of 7, so the away form is something that Antonio Conte will look at. He really needs to improve that away form. That said, they are scoring on the road. They've only failed to score in one of those games. It was a defeat to Manchester City. I'm sure Harry Kane will get a good reception for skying that penalty. When his name's read out, he'll get a standing ovation, a few claps from every corner of the stadium, and it's probably a trend you'll see across the grounds whenever the English players, the key players, so to speak. I think Maguire should probably get a decent reception. He played pretty well given the criticism that he got for the whole sort of year leading into the World Cup. When he puts on an England shirt, he's solid. He's a proper defender. Ball comes, head the ball away. You've done your job. 3 p.m. games now. Crystal Palace hosting Fulham. Crystal Palace much better at home than they are away. They've only lost to Chelsea and Arsenal. Arsenal was the opening game of the season, if you remember. They played really well, especially in the second half. And the Chelsea game was a 90 whatever minute winner from former loanee Conor Gallagher. Well, Fulham can score, no trouble in scoring away from home at all. In fact, they've scored in the last 6 away games played, with both teams scoring in every one of those games. So BTTS landing in 6 out of 6 on the road for Fulham. Big task for Nathan Jones then. Southampton hosting Brighton. Southampton are 19th. This is a bit of a derby. The fans don't really consider it a derby. It is kind of a derby, but it's not exactly Celtic Rangers, let's put it that way. Defending so far this season, again, Nathan Jones has just come in. Let's see what he can do. But so far, defending has been the issue for Southampton. They've conceded in 93% of all games. They're averaging 1.8 goals conceded per game. It's not really sustainable. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking of Brighton as not the most prolific team. Certainly last season they have a lot of the ball, but they don't always get the goal. Well, this season it's not really the case. They're 7th in terms of goals scored, 23 goals in 14 games. City, Arsenal, Newcastle, Liverpool, Spurs and Leicester, the only teams above them, and a few of those teams have actually played more games. No trouble on the road either. They've scored in 6 out of 7 away games, and you would fancy them to continue that trend here at Southampton. I'm going into this one with a bit of an open mind, and it's a similar story for Wolves, Villa, Southampton. You've got new managers there that were appointed before the World Cup. They've now had over a month of solid time with the players, without the players, to work on tactics, to watch the games back. And Nathan Jones, he will look at this Southampton team and think, right, how can I solidify this? How can I make us hard to beat? His Luton team was quite hard to play against, so hopefully he can bring some of that into the Premier League. It's not going to be easy. They are 19th, they are down there. But it's just something to think about when you look at a single stat or a single thing and think, oh, well, they've not scored all season. They've got new managers, and Nathan Jones has a good pedigree. I'm excited to see what he can do in the Premier League. He's a good young coach, and I don't think this will be an easy game for Brighton. Leicester hosting Newcastle, potentially the game of the day. In the 6 games before the World Cup, Leicester won 5 of those. They conceded 0 in those 5 victories, and the only defeat was to Man City, and that was a 1-0 defeat. So they're in form. Now to Newcastle, and I think they do have a real chance of getting Champions League. They're so solid. They definitely concede more away from home. You can see that in the data, it's clear. Many clean sheets at home. Their home record is amazing, and you would expect it with that crowd and the change in atmosphere. Teams like Tottenham, teams like United, they've got to be at it. And if they want top 4, Chelsea, they've got to be on it every week, because Newcastle are. Newcastle have lost once, and it was a 97th minute defeat at Liverpool. It's okay to lose at Anfield. So if you take away that, they're unbeaten, which is crazy. They just don't lose games. And they've got such a solid team, and there's still so much quality that they can add, and I'm sure they will in the transfer market. Such solidity, yet there is that flair, there is that creative freedom that they allow the players at the top end of the pitch. This is going to be a good game, I think. I can see a score draw, possibly a 2-2, because again, Newcastle, they don't know when to quit. Excellent season so far. 2 English managers going at it here, and yeah, it should be a great contest. Let me know what you think the score will be. I'm thinking a 2-2 score draw, exciting game, plenty of goals. Boxing Day. Let's hope for some magic. Now, if you've had a few drinks on Christmas Day and you're trying to stay awake for Boxing Day festivities at night, maybe don't watch Everton against Wolves. Everton have scored in just 53% of games. For Wolves, that number is 47%. Lopetegui is in as the new manager of Wolves, of course, so bear that in mind. He's looking to deliver the first away win of the season for Wolves. They haven't won on the road. They have scored in 7 out of 11 of those games, though. So scoring is not always the issue for Wolves, but they have failed to secure 3 points away from home. I think defensively they've lost something. Connor Cody, who I don't think he'll be able to play, he's on loan, isn't he? So I don't know if he'll be able to play. That'll be a big loss for Everton. And I think he's a big loss for Wolves. I'm just perplexed as to why they let him go. He's such a character, such a leader. Not a bad defender, by any means. 5:30 on Boxing Day, we've got the Coutinho derby. It's Aston Villa against Liverpool. It was the Gerrard derby, but of course he's been sacked. Unai Emery is in his place, and he had a decent start to his Aston Villa career. Villa beat Manchester United and Brighton in the final 2 games before the World Cup, and they'll be hoping that Liverpool continues the general trend of their away form this season. Klopp's side failed to win any of their opening 5 away games in the Premier League this season. That was until they played Spurs in November before the World Cup, 2-1 victory there. Is that a sign of things to come? Those last couple of games, 2 very important wins for Liverpool just before the World Cup, and I think for many teams the World Cup came at a good time, especially for Liverpool, a chance to reset. Salah will be well rested, and I think he might have needed it. After the African Cup of Nations, he played 120 minutes, 4 times in that competition, came back into the Premier League straight away, and just wasn't up to those levels. I'm sure we'll see that, by the way, with some Premier League players. You know, they've given their all in the World Cup, and they come back and it's just not there. Varane was falling over for France in the second half, just couldn't run anymore. I don't know how he's going to play for the next 3-4 months. If he's needed to play 90 minutes every week for Man United, he's going to get some injuries. I think there's going to be a lot of injuries. Boxing Day ends with table-topping Arsenal hosting West Ham. Of all the teams playing on Boxing Day, Arsenal are the only team to have scored in every game this season. They're averaging 2.64 points per game. Very, very good. But that was with Gabriel Jesus. The Brazilian is injured and expected to be out for at least 2 months. Absolutely massive loss for Arsenal. Now, I do think they'll edge past West Ham, maybe 1-0 victory. I still think they've got the quality to get past West Ham at home. They should be beating them. But long term, or maybe medium term, I don't think Eddie Nketiah is that guy. He's not going to replace Jesus. Jesus is so hard to replace. The way he links up and brings the midfielders into the game as well. They're going to miss that, and I think it'll be evident. I don't think they'll create as many chances against West Ham, but as I say, I think they'll just edge through it, maybe a moment of quality. But when it comes to those bigger tests and the games where teams are really sitting in against Arsenal and they're needing that little bit of a spark, a little bit of magic up top, Jesus isn't there. Do you think Nketiah has what it takes to replace Jesus? Do you think Arsenal will beat West Ham? Please let me know in the comments. And enjoy Boxing Day. It's a day full of festive football, and I'm delighted that it is back.